Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Jeremy and I'd like to talk to you about something that's pretty near and dear to my heart. A verse out of the Bible or a passage out of the Bible that pretty much influences the way that I live my life, the way I view the world, and also a big way that I raise my kids, my philosophy behind that. So without further ado, I'll jump right on into that. So you may have ever heard of something called the Shema. The Shema is a passage or a prayer, I guess, that Jews specifically pray. It takes some passages and verses out of Deuteronomy and out of Numbers and kind of combines it. And what ultimately it is, it's a reminder of who God is and how we should live and how we should obey His commands and so forth like that. So if you ever get a chance, look more into that. It's a really neat passage in a prayer. And it comes from the Hebrew word hear, which is how the passage in the prayer starts. But there's a part in that really sticks out to me and that for many, many years now has played a big part in who I am. So I want to read that to you real quick. I'm going to look off the screen here, but follow along if you want. It's Deuteronomy 6:4-9 is the passage that I'm going to kind of focus on. So here we go. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts, and press them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols around on your hands, and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and your gates. That's Deuteronomy 6:4-9. And there's so much there that we could examine and pick apart and look at, and it's really, really good stuff. But what I really want to kind of focus on is, well, we'll start there. Hold on, we'll get there. So verses 4 and 5 you're probably familiar with. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your strength. This was Jesus' response to some Jewish leaders. You can find that in Matthew. They come to him and they say, what's the greatest commandment? And they're trying to trick him up, and they're trying to ask him a question that will show that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he responds by, number 1, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And then the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. You may have heard these as the golden rule, golden law. This is Jesus' response, and he says every other law, every rule, every law, every commandment hangs on these two things: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with everything that you are, and to love your neighbor as you would yourself. But then in Deuteronomy 6, after Moses gives this command, he goes on to say that you should have these commandments that I've been talking about and put them onto yourself, have them engraved in your heart, impressed on your heart, and then once you do that, then you need to teach your children these things. It goes on to say that we should not only just teach our children, but we should teach our children at all times. When you are lying around the house, when you're eating breakfast, when you're eating lunch and dinner, when you're getting ready for bed, when you're waking up, when you're driving to school, when you're coming back from school, when you're doing everything, at all times, we should be teaching our children about God and His commandments and His love and what He's done for us. And today we can specifically apply that to what Jesus has done for us. But it's really important that if we're going to do that, that we need to impress that onto our own hearts. We need to be an example. We need to live like Jesus. We need to exemplify God's love. And even though it talks about teaching our children, which I think is so crucial and so important and something that's really lacking, I think it also can be applied to just our daily life. I've spent a lot of time in youth ministry, and for one reason or another, I think a lot of parents and a lot of families rely very heavily on the church to teach ourselves and our kids and our families about the Bible, about Jesus, about God. And I don't think that's the intention of what church is supposed to be. I think God designed it so that the majority of discipleship should be coming from the home, and not only scholarly and deep theological teachings, but just everyday life. And many times when Jesus talks about God and his love and his rules and his commandments and so forth, he uses everyday examples. And you see this throughout all the Gospels. When he just talks about parables, he'll just be walking along and say, hey, there's some bread. Guess what? I'm the bread of life. And hey, guess what? There's a fish. I'm going to make you fishermen of men. And so I think this passage speaks such volumes to me, because everyday life can provide so many examples of teaching people about Jesus. And especially as a parent, being able to take those moments and teaching opportunities to show my kids, hey, this is something that, this is a simple truth that you can see found in the Bible. And so that's what I would like to kind of make this series or this channel more about, is finding those everyday moments to teach yourself, to teach your kids maybe, to teach your neighbors, neighbors being just anybody you come in contact with. I want this to be an opportunity for us to see God and God's love and God's truth and God's word found as you just go throughout your day, and making sure that you take that opportunity, if you can, to teach about Jesus and find Jesus in these things. I think it's important to realize that we can learn about God without a 45-minute sermon or a book series or doing a very extensive thing, because see, God he wants us to know him, and he wanted the least amount of barriers for that to happen. And Jesus came so that we may know God. And I think a lot of times we trip ourselves up because we feel like we have to jump through these hoops, or we have to go over these obstacles or climb these mountains to get to God. And that's not it at all. And so what I want to do is I want to help simplify it. I want to help make the confusion and tediousness of learning about God go away, because I don't think it needs to be there. And so I feel like one of the things God's blessed me with is the ability to take complex truths and make them relatable. And so that's what I want to do. So if you have a question about God, if you have a question about theology, or if you have a question about just, hey, I've heard this, please ask. I also want to be very honest and real with you. I want to share struggles, I want to share joys, I want to share strengths and weaknesses and all of it, because it's all part of our Christian walk and getting to know God and being closer with Jesus and living like him. So that's all I have for today. Stay tuned if you want to hear more, comment if you like, but most importantly, I want you to go out and encourage someone today. Tell them how they've impacted your life or something that you admire about them. And then above all, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever.